Masechet Nazir Daf Yod, a fascinating Mishnah in which one personifies feelings of a cow or a door onto oneself. Amar Amera Parazo Hareni Nezira im Omedet Ani. Omer Hadelet Hazeh Hareni Nezira im Niftach Ani. Okay, to understand this case, we have to realize that people often made a Nazir promise if something good will happen. Like if a person is sick, he may say, if I get better, I will be a Nazir. It's a way of doing something good and saying, bringing good luck, bringing God's mercy upon him in hopes that in the merit of becoming a Nazir, he will get better. Okay, that would be a usual case. And so here, a person is walking along in his farm. He sees a cow lying on the floor, lying down, having trouble getting up. And so he stands in for the cow as if the cow, what would the cow be thinking right now if the cow could talk? So this person says that the cow is thinking, I will be a Nazir if I can get up. Okay, that's what he says. Or he sees a door that is stuck, and he's going to personify what the door is thinking. He's putting himself in the mind of the door, so to speak. And so he says that the door says, I will be a Nazir if I can open. All right. And in the meantime, he may be either trying to get the cow to stand up or get the door to unlock. Now, does he become a Nazir himself if he says that? Bet Shammai omerim Nazir, u Bet Hillel omerim eno Nazir. Okay, Bet Hillel makes sense. The person's not a Nazir. He never actually took upon himself to be a Nazir. He just said, the cow must be thinking, I want to be a Nazir. But Bet Shammai says, no, actually, since the person said language of a Nazir, even though he said it in the name of the cow or in the name of the door, he means to put himself, since a cow can't be a Nazir and a door can't become a Nazir, he's putting himself in their place, and he really hopes that the cow will make it up and the door will open. So in effect, he is putting himself in that place, and therefore saying, I will be a Nazir if the cow can stand up or if the door will open. And therefore, he is in fact a Nazir. Okay, fascinating. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, af keshamru bet Shammai lo omrim, ela beomer hare para zo alai korban im omedeti. This Rabbi Yehuda is similar to Rabbi Yehuda in the previous Mishnah, that this is his interpretation of Bet Shammai. He says, even when Bet Shammai says that this formula is effective, he doesn't mean it's effective that he actually will be a Nazir, but rather it's that he says, or it's as if he says, this cow I take upon myself as like a korban, meaning it's forbidden to me if it should stand up on its own. In other words, he's not actually becoming a Nazir, he's just creating a prohibition, similar to the previous Mishnah where a person says, I am a Nazir from figs. Well, you can't be a Nazir with figs because a Nazir is only grapes. So this, instead, Rabbi Yehuda said that he becomes prohibited to figs. Just saying the word Nazir here doesn't actually mean being a Nazir. It just means separating from, prohibiting himself from. And similarly here, Rabbi Yehuda is saying the same thing, even though he didn't say I'm a Nazir from a cow, but he put it in the mouth of the cow, and he said I'm a Nazir, so the effect of that is not that he actually becomes a Nazir, but that the cow will be prohibited to him. Good, that is the Mishnah. And now the Gemara is going to give a couple of explanations, the scenarios of exactly what's going on in the Mishnah. So first we ask the obvious question, Para mi ka mishtaya? Does a cow speak? What are you talking about? Does this guy hear the cow say, I want to be a Nazir if I stand up? What is going on? Amar Rami bar Chama. הכה במה עסקינן, כגון שהייתה פרה רבוסה לפניו, ואמר, כי ספורה פרה זו, אינה עומדת, הרני נזיר מבשרה אם עמדה מאליה, ועמדה מאליה. והלכו בית שמאי לשיטתן, ובית הלל לשיטתן. So Rami bar Chama explains, we're talking about a case of a person that has a cow in front of him that is prone, can't get up, and the person says, I am going to project what the cow is thinking. The para is thinking, that I can't get up, and I will be a Nazir from its flesh if it stands up on its own. In other words, the person kind of wants to encourage the cow to get up. And so he maybe wants to invoke heavenly help for it to get up on its own. And so he adds the word here, me'eleha. He says, I'll be a Nazir if this cow can get up on its own, right? I'm rooting it on. I'll be a Nazir. Hey, go ahead. Go get up on its own. He says the word Nazir me besara, Nazir from the meat of it, even though that it's really a Nazir from wine. But this here, Bet Shammai is following his own opinion. So he sees the cow. He says, I'll be a Nazir from the meat of the cow if it gets up on its own. And sure enough, it struggles and it gets up on its own. Hooray! So now the if part of the statement was fulfilled, and therefore he has to be a Nazir. Now, Bet Shammai follows his own opinion that we always find a way to apply his words. People don't say things for naught, as Rabbi Meir said. And therefore, even though he said Nazir from its meat, we interpret it to mean he meant Nazir from wine, and so he's a Nazir anyway. Even though there's a bit of a mismatch, we say that's what he meant to. He did mean to make himself a Nazir. When Bet Hillel also follow their own approach, because Bet Hillel says, sorry, you said something that's nonsense, right? Even if you say an if-then, and the if is fulfilled, and the then, if you just say by itself, Hareni Nazir mi besara, right? Besar parazo. It doesn't make sense. Just like saying I'm a Nazir from figs, it makes no sense. You don't do anything, right? You filled in A and you crossed it out and wrote B and then crossed it out and wrote D, right? You said a contradiction in terms. A Nazir is not with meat, and therefore we throw out the whole statement, and he is not a Nazir. And so, see, this is another example similar to the Mishnah beforehand. We're just a little bit more complicated because we're adding an if-then statement, and also a cow is much less like grapes than figs are. Okay, good. So that's Rami Bar Chama's explanation. Now, with that explanation, well, let's wonder why we need all these different examples of the previous Mishnah and this Mishnah and the door also. Bet Shammai damre min hagero garot min hadebela have nazir hachaname ki amar besara have nazir bet Hillel omrim la have nazir. Okay, this shows that they're following shitatan, their own opinion, their own views. Bet Shammai, who said in the earlier Mishnah, if a person says, I'm a Nazir from figs, from dried figs, from fig cake, then he is a Nazir, because we interpret his words to mean that he wants to be a regular Nazir from wine, even though he said figs, right? So when he says from meat, same thing, right? You said the wrong item, but we will impose we will assume that you meant to create a Nazir prohibition. And Bet Hillel says, no, he's not a Nazir because he said words that are a mismatch, syntax error, does not compute, and therefore not a Nazir. Okay, now we ask, Veha amaruha Bet Shammai chada zimna. Bet Shammai already told us the principle. Why does Bet Shammai need to tell us the same thing with figs, with a cow, and with a door? Right? It's all the same principle that he said, I'm a Nazir, and it doesn't matter what he says after. We assume he creates a prohibition. Amar Rava tarte telat. So Rava says, he said it 2-3 times. This is the way sometimes of sages that they give multiple examples. V'chen tane Rabbi Chia tarte telat. V'chen amar Rabbi Oshaya tarte telat. Not only Rava, but even these earlier Amoraim, Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Oshaya, they also say, yeah, sometimes there's 2 and 3 examples of a case to drill it in. It's okay to have some repetition. I think it's interesting that this statement that you repeat something 2 or 3 times is itself repeated 3 times here in the name of different sages. And again, if you have 3 different sages said it, okay, so then we repeated it, we'll remember it. Okay, good. So that's what these Amoraim say. Nevertheless, the Stam, the anonymous voice in the Gemara, does not want that. No, fine, you can say it 2-3 times, but it can't just be for extra, just for the sake of repetition. Each one has to teach us something new. So what is each one coming to teach us? Usirichi, I need all 3. Tiit marbeha gerogarot udvela. Hatam hu de amri Bet Shammai have nazir, mishum de michalefan ba'anavim. Okay, if you told me only regarding the first case in the previous Mishnah, that he says, I'm a Nazir from figs, I would, if I only had that case, I would say it's only there that Bet Shammai says he's a Nazir, because figs and grapes are easy to interchange. Yesterday we said they're not so easy, but they're easier than aval basar ba'anavim lamichalaf, easier to interchange than grapes and meat. Right, two different fruits. They have same berachot and similar laws, and so a person might forget. Oh, a Nazir was from figs. Oh, from grapes. Okay, we can assume he got mixed up, but nobody would mix up grapes with meat. Okay. V'itmar basar hachahud amre bet Shammai have nazir bebisra v'chamra aval gero garot udvela la kamash malan. On the other hand, if you only had the case of meat, I might say, oh, only here in meat does Bet Shammai say that he is a Nazir, because meat and wine always go together as a pair, right? When you're having meat, you don't just have a steak by itself, you have with wine. That means you're having a nice, big, luxurious meal. And so when he said meat, he means wine. Meat and wine, they always go together. And so therefore, he is a Nazir. But if he says, I'm going to be a Nazir from figs, no, nobody makes a mistake and thinks figs don't go together with grapes. Those are two different, no one mixes those things up. So, kamash malan, that's why I need the previous Mishnah about figs and this Mishnah about meat also. Now, if I only had those two, the figs and the meat, which are both food items, I would say that in these are the cases that that Bet Shammai says, yes, he is a Nazir. But if he says a door, right, I'm a Nazir, he says it in the name of a door, then maybe Bet Shammai would agree with Bet Hillel that he does not become a Nazir, because there's no way that someone's going to mistake a door for any edible item. And so therefore, I need the door case also to say Bet Shammai would even agree that he is a Nazir, even though he said that the door is thinking, I'm going to be a Nazir. That even that, right? We interpret his words in some in whatever way we need to say that yes, he is creating a prohibition of a Nazir. Vitana delet. Okay, now how about just put delet? If I had only door, then for Bet Shammai I would know for sure meat and figs. But here's the thing: if I had only door, behad kamre Bet Hillel, ava behachtartem amodulehu Bet Shammai kamash malan. If it said only the case of door, I would say Bet Hillel thinks he's not a Nazir only when he says, in the name of a door, I'm a Nazir, because doors and Nazir have nothing to do with each other. It's not even edible. But if I had only that case, I might think that Bet Hillel would agree with Bet Shammai if it is food or figs, which are food items, and people may confuse those with grapes. Therefore, even Bet Hillel would agree that he is a Nazir. That's why, Kamash Malan Dela, that's why I need both of those cases as well. So you see, we need all three cases to teach me the extent of the machloket between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, that it cuts across all of them. All right, so far so good. That was the interpretation of Rami Bar Chama. However, Amar Rava, Mikatani amda me'eleha. Rava says in the Mishnah, it doesn't say if it stands on its own. Right? According to Rami Bar Chama, the guy sees the cow. He says, if I want to encourage it, if you stand up on your own, cow, then I'll be a Nazir. But you added that word in, stand up on its own. It doesn't say that in the Mishnah. That would be an important word. Rather, Rava says, again, the cow is prone in front of him, and a person says, I will accept upon myself a sacrifice of a Nazir. If it will stand up. Okay, so Harei korban. Now, even though the cow it's not that he's going to take this cow and make it a korban, because a cow is not one of the korbanot that you bring, that a Nazir brings. But he means I'll bring an animal like this animal here. Sometimes with a Nazir you bring other animals as well. So he says, I'll be a Nazir if it can stand up. Okay, and stand up in any way. He doesn't say on its own. Now, Bishlama para bat korban hi, ela delat bat korban hi. Now we interrupt. Rava, hold on. I understand what you're saying. It makes sense for the case of a cow, because a cow can be a sacrifice, even though it's not a Nazir sacrifice. Okay, it's within the realm of a sacrifice. It makes sense. He'd be looking at the cow and say, oh, this cow is a sacrificial type of animal. I will want to take upon myself, not this cow, but other animals for Nazir status. If it will get up, then I will be a Nazir. Fine, it makes sense to say that for a cow. But if you see a door that's stuck, what does a door have to do with sacrifice? Hare alai, this door will be a korban. It's not in the category at all. So too far-fetched. Ela amar Rava, so we're just going to refine what Rava said, or what he meant. Kegon shaita para revusa lefanav. Okay, so far the same. The para is in front of a person, and he says, Vamar, Hareni Nazir miyayin im lo amda. I will be a Nazir from wine. Hareni Nazir miyayin is a regular good formula, right? That's the top formula. I will be a Nazir from wine if it doesn't get up. Meaning if it doesn't stand in some way. Ve'amda, we'll see what that means. Im lo amda, does that mean on its own, or if the person helps it? Im lo amda. Ve'amda me'eleha, and sure enough, it stands up. Okay, so here, Hareni Nazir miyayin. So here, this can apply to a cow or a door equally. And therefore, we solve the problem of the door, right? I'm going to be a Nazir if it doesn't get up. The sense here is that this cow is sitting there lying down and he can't get up. The person is challenging himself and saying, if I can't get this up, I'll be a Nazir, right? I'm dedicating myself to helping out this cow and lifting it up in some way. And if it doesn't get up, I'll be a Nazir. So then he's going to really try. He may stand there for hours in order to get it up. Okay, and then what happened? It ended up standing up by itself, right? While he goes to go get a beam to help it out, it stood up by itself, and he didn't end up having to help it. Okay, so what would be the outcome? Bet Shammai savre turped hay gavra mishum ukma bidehu veha la ukma. Bet Shammai says he is a Nazir because he did not fulfill his condition. Even though the cow did get up, so turped hay gavra, the person's intention, right, the essence of his statement was that it should get up by the person's strength, by the person's own hand. He's like, I'm going to help it out. And if I can't get it up, then I'll be a Nazir. And in the end, the guy did not help it up. It stood up by itself. And therefore, the then part of it is triggered. If he would have gotten it up on his own, and because of his strength, because of his hands, the cow got up, then he wouldn't be a Nazir. But here, even though it got up, it wasn't because of his help. According to Bet Shammai, he is a Nazir. Whereas Bet Hillel says, no, the main thing the guy wants is for it to get up. It was prone, and now it stood. It doesn't matter whether it was necessarily by his own hand or it got up on its own. The person had in mind, right, if it doesn't get up, then I'll be a Nazir, in order to encourage himself to put in the effort to get up. But in the end, it got up, and so it was not essential. It was not an essential part of his condition that he's the one that has to do it. All right, and this explains the machloka between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. Good. Now, a couple of questions on this, Rava's interpretation. Ihachi, Ema Sefa. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Af keshamru Bet Shammai lo amru ela beomer, hare hen alai korban, para mi kamat pis ba midi. Wait a second. And remember the Sefa, Rabbi Yehuda interpreted Bet Shammai's opinion to say, even when Bet Shammai says he does create a prohibition, it only means that it's hareh like korban, that the cow will be prohibited to me. Not that he's actually becoming a Nazir. But does he take a vow against the cow? Remember, with according to Rava, he says Hareni Nazir mi yayin. He doesn't say Hareni Nazir mi besara. Right? I would understand if you say Hareni Nazir mi besara, that can be interpreted to mean I will be a Nazir, and like he said, I'll be a Nazir from dates and from figs, and we assume he means really Nazir from wine, and from meat and wine go together, right? We can understand if he says a word like that, but if he said that can be interpreted either as a Nazir or I'm a Nazir from figs. In the previous Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda said that means he's prohibited from figs. In this Mishnah, if he says I'm prohibited from this cow, then that can mean that he's prohibited from the cow itself. He creates a prohibition. But according to Rava, he only said I am a Nazir from wine. So here, right, but he just says I'm a Nazir from wine. So how would that create a prohibition against the cow? There's no language here that would do that. So how would you explain the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda? Okay, so we're going to modify it once again. The person didn't say I'm a Nazir from wine, but rather I'm a Nazir from the flesh of this cow if it doesn't get up. Okay, and sure enough, it gets up. And what the person has in mind is mi besara. According to the Biyuda, means I'll be prohibited from the animal. According to the Tanakama of Bet Shammai, it means he's going to be a Nazir, and he could be a Nazir mi besara, still means with meat and wine, it still means a regular Nazir of wine. And the idea is, I'm going to be a Nazir if I don't help it up. But he doesn't say specifically if I don't help it up. He says if it doesn't stand up. In the end, it stood up on its own. Bet Shammai savre turpe dehu gabra mishum ukma bidehu veha lo la ukma. According to Bet Shammai, the essence of a person's condition, his if statement is that he should help it up with his own hands, and he in the end didn't help it up because it stood up on its own. Since he didn't help it up, therefore he has to be a Nazir. Whereas Bet Hillel says no, the essence of a person's intention was that it's prone and he wants it to stand up, and now it's standing. It doesn't really matter if he's the one that did it or if it stood up on his own. It's standing, he's happy, so he doesn't have to be a Nazir. He said I'm only going to be a Nazir if it doesn't stand. Look, and now it's standing. Okay, good. So now we're happy. We explained everything. One last question. Hold on. According to Bet Hillel, let's say he couldn't get it up and it didn't get up on its own, right? As much as he tried, he brought a crane, he brought levers, couldn't get it up. So then what? He will be a Nazir. But after all, right, because we added the word mibesara here. According to Bet Hillel, if you say the wrong formula, Hareni Nazir mibesara, forget the conditions. Just say Hareni Nazir mibesara. Is that person a Nazir? He's not a Nazir. Even if he says Hareni Nazir from figs, he's not a Nazir. So it's a syntax error. Bet Hillel throws out syntax errors, and so even if it lays prone, he still would not be a Nazir because he said mi besara. He didn't say from yain. And our final explanation is the Tamar de Bet Shammai Ka'amri. Bet Hillel Bet Hillel is explaining in this formula. Bet Hillel, in fact, he would say it's not at all. But when Bet Hillel said not a Nazir, in this case also, they were saying it according to the reasoning of Bet Shammai. Ledidan afilu la kamat name lahave nazir. Listen, according to us, Bet Hillel is saying, Bet Hillel says, according to my own opinion, even if it doesn't get up, he's not a Nazir, right? Doesn't matter the condition. If he says, Harei Nazir me besara, that's a meaningless statement, we throw it out. But what I mean to add here is that Lididchu damritu yehave Nazir, even according to you, Bet Shammai, that you would say that you parse it as a prohibition, and then Nazir mi besara, we assume yes, he does. People don't say things for naught, and there is a Nazir obligation. Odulan mihat turped haden gabra mishum derabia vehakamat. You should nevertheless agree that if it gets up, even if it gets up on his own, that the essence of the person's intention was that it's prone, but now it stood up. And so what does it matter if I helped it or it got up on its own? So that's what Bet Hillel is saying. Bet Shammai lav turpeh dehai gabra mishum ukma bidehu v'ha la ukmeh. And Bet Shammai says, no, isn't the person's essence of his intention that he wants to be the one to get it up? I'm going to get it up, or else I'll be a Nazir. But he, in the end, was not the one to get it up. He wanted to come and be the hero. I saved this cow, and he wasn't able to do it. It just did it on its own, and therefore, Bet Shammai says he does have to be a Nazir. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.